it's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have a card to share with you that features Distress Ink watercolor stamping. And this is a really fun technique that helps you create a watercolor effect with stamped images. And it's a really fun, easy way to get that watercolor feel without actually having to do any watercoloring. So I'm going to be using some stamp sets from Altenew today to do my watercoloring along with some Distress Inks. So I first have the Simple Fruits stamp set, which is a newer set from Altenew. I'm going to be using the apple image from that set. I've also got the Peony Bouquet stamp set, and I'm going to be using just a couple images from that one. And then I also have this Floral Shadow set, which I'll be using quite a few images from as well. Now, the inspiration for my card came from this photo here that I saw of a print on Pinterest. It's an artist print that I think is so beautiful. It's got some really beautiful peaches, and really I think it has a really great feel to it. So because I saw that image and it made me think of this technique of doing some distress watercolor stamping, so I wanted to go ahead and use the apple from the stamp set that I have picked out here, the Simple Fruit set. I'm going to actually turn that into a peach. So you're really not going to be able to tell that this was an apple. It's going to look very similar to a peach by the time I'm finished with it. So to do the stamping technique, I'm taking a bunch of Distress Inks and layering them onto my stamp here. So I'm taking a few different yellows and oranges and pinks and reds, just kind of trying to match some of the Distress Ink colors that I have with colors that would be in a peach. You don't have to use as many colors as I have here. I have most of the Distress Ink, so I went ahead and grabbed all the colors that I like, and I'm going to be kind of mixing and matching them throughout this card. But you could definitely just use a couple colors. So I spritzed it with a little bit of water before I stamped it down. That got the inks to move and kind of mix together to create that watercolor effect. It looks a little splotchy right now, but once it dries, it'll look really, really beautiful. I'm doing the same thing with some of the branches. All of these images are a combination of images from the stamp sets that I showed you at the beginning of the video. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that same process of adding the ink, spritzing it with a bit of water, and then smushing it down onto my paper very carefully. I want to be careful as I push this down because I don't want to mess up the images too much. I want them to still have a bit of definition but still look watercolored at the same time. And I'm also making sure to overlap the images in spots because I want them to have that same feel that the artist print that I showed you at the beginning of the video has as well. So I'm going to continue stamping these images down onto my paper until I have it completely covered most of the way. I'll have some empty spots, which I'll fill in a few seconds here with some of the smaller images from the sets that I've picked out. One of the things I will mention is that when I'm spraying this with water, I'm using the Distress Sprayer. And so that's going to give you a slightly different spray than some of the other mister bottles that you might have. And I spray it from about 6 to 8 inches away from the stamped image. So there's quite a bit of water on this stamp, but I want that to be the case because I want it to have a watercolor effect. And it's okay if some of the images are a little bit more splotchy than others, if they have a little bit more water content to them. So it makes it have more of a true watercolor feel when some areas are a little bit more watery and not so defined than other areas. So I'm also using some of the other smaller images here and filling in the spaces between these larger images. And again, I'm overlapping in spots so that way it has a neat layered feel. I'm also going to go ahead and stamp some lighter leaves just to kind of fill in the background areas. I'm stamping these with the Cracked Pistachio ink color, and I'm just kind of like putting them in a few different places only because I want to kind of fill in a couple of the spots and I want them to look like they're kind of behind some of the images. You don't have to do this, but I thought it finished it off really nicely. And for any of you that are interested in all of the ink colors that I selected here for this card, I'll have them over at the blog, so you can go ahead and check that out. The link will be in the description box below. Okay, so I love adding splatters to some of my watercolored designs. So right here, I'm taking a bunch of the ink colors that I used in my background, and I'm smushing them onto a clear block and picking them up with a water brush and just kind of flicking them over top of the areas that I want them to be. I'm focusing a lot of the darker colors over top of the areas that kind of go with those colors. So for instance, I splattered most of the green over top of the green leaves and most of the red over top of the peaches, just because I felt it worked better that way. Now after I've created my background, I'm taking this over to my Big Shot, and I'm going to use the Eyelet Stitches dies from Memory Box, and I'm going to die cut an eyelet edge around all 4 sides of my card. This just finishes off the edges nicely and gives it a little bit more of a dressed up feel instead of it being cut down to just a simple rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and add some double-sided adhesive to the back side of my panel, put a bit of Fun Foam on top of that, and then add more double-sided adhesive and attach this down onto an ivory cardstock card base. The ivory cardstock is from Simon Says Stamp. Once I had my card put together, I'm going to work on creating the sentiment. So this sentiment is from the Floral Shadows stamp set, and I'm stamping it in Hot Lips ink. It really drew out the reds in those peaches, which really looks cool. So I'm going to go ahead and ink it up again a second time to make it a little bit darker and kind of fill in the spot where along the Y where I didn't stamp it completely. Once I stamped it with the red ink, I'm taking a bit of clear ink from Simon Says Stamp, inking up the stamp once again, and I'm going to push that back down over top of the sentiment. And because I'm using the Misty stamping tool, I'm getting the stamped image in the exact same place that I had it the first time. And by doing this, this allows me to take some clear embossing powder and sprinkle this over top of the stamped image to give it a little bit more dimension. So after I've applied the embossing powder, I'm going to heat set this to melt the powder. You'll notice as I apply the heat, the powder will start to melt and add a really nice dimensional effect to the sentiment. I'm going to apply a bit more embossing ink right over top of that and add a bit more powder, and then I'll heat set it once again. You don't have to repeat this twice, but I really like the look of adding a second layer of embossing powder. Just think it adds a little bit more extra dimension. So I trimmed this down with some fine tip scissors to cut out the sentiment. Then I'm going to attach that down onto my card using some foam tape, and I'm going to pair it with a sentiment from Hero Arts' newest thank you stamp set. I really like this stamp set. It has a bunch of really cool thank you sentiments, and I felt that it went really well with the script font of my thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that down off of some yellow cardstock, and then I'll add that down onto my card with some liquid adhesive, and again the thank you is popped up with some foam tape. So I need to figure out where I want to place this, and I decided to put it down towards the bottom right hand corner of the card. I decided I also wanted to add some sequins to kind of fill in the areas around the sentiment and just add a little bit of sparkle and shine. I used rose gold sequins and some sparkling clear from Pretty Pink Posh. I really like how the rose gold matched the peachy colors that are in the card and just added a little bit of extra something special to the card design. So here's a close-up look at the finished card, and I also created an envelope to match with it by using some of the same Distress ink colors that I had used on the stamping. I just ink blended those onto a plain white envelope, added a few water splatters, and I was good to go. But it matches the card really beautifully, and it just finishes off the whole design. So if you have any questions on this card, please leave them in the comment section below, or you can head on over to the blog to get more information on this card, including still pictures and products used. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more inspiration. And then also be sure to check out these other videos that we have here featuring some fun Distress ink techniques. Thanks so much for watching this video. I will see you again soon, and have a fabulous day. Bye!